If you mint a stablecoin, you're not just minting a token, you are minting an authorization parameter. And this cycle, that parameter is becoming a post-quantum decision. Welcome back to the Control Loop. I'm Dariia and today's episode is Mint PQ Native Stablecoins Day 1. But before we go technical, here is one macro signal in one sentence. Stablecoins are moving from crypto plumbing to real financial infrastructure. Stripe CEO Patrick Collinson has called stablecoins room temperature superconductors from financial services. That is the upside. But the risk is that the most issuance today still locks you into the legacy signature assumptions that will be painful to unwind in the next couple of years.
Yep, definitely, Dariia. I think one thing that our listeners want to be defined is what does Mint PQ native stablecoin day 1 actually mean?
It means that your stablecoin's authorization model of like who can issue and who can spend is post-quantum at the day you issue it, not retrofitted later, not migrated from one protocol to another. So stablecoins and real-world assets are by definition long-duration liabilities. They get listed, they get custodied, they get integrated into exchanges, used as collateral, people place their trust on them, they're getting bridged and moved across venues. So the signature scheme that's controlling mint, burn, admin, freezing, upgrades, all of it becomes the security perimeters for years to come. These are not ephemeral assets. So minting PQ native day 1 means basically 3 things: that issuance keys and policies are PQ safe from the first mint of the first dollar. Second is that the chain on which they are minted, its transaction and verification path is also designed to be post-quantum at market speed, not just a contract workaround that adds latency and cost or a stressful migration. And the third point, yes, would be a future forced migration event is a big risk operationally. It can fracture liquidity, it can damage trust when it's done under stress, and it will be done under stress.
I think this is very much relevant that you are going to buy a cell phone and there is a cell phone which is out in the market which is with the new technology of say Bluetooth available already, and you are buying the old cell phone which is without the Bluetooth. And mind you and our listeners is that you have the choice right now to buy and choose between the two technologies. So, and this is something, not Bluetooth. Bluetooth is you can or you cannot have. That does not make much of a difference. But essentially being not PQ safe is a very big deal. That means your stablecoin can be stolen, your funds can be stolen, and you'll be left with nothing. So essentially, this is for listeners as well to understand that when they are when these users and of the stable coins are taking those stable coins, they have to understand that these people they have to take from those issuers which are issuing them PQ native, or else their money is at stake. This is for the listeners as well. So Dariia, people are saying that the quantum is years away. Why do issuers should care now?
Because already the standardization bodies around the world are changing their posture to move now, not wait, given that the timelines of all of these institutions are measured actually in years and not in weeks. So National Institute of Standardization, NIST, has been very explicit in their wording. There is no need to wait to start of the adoption of post-quantum standards because integration takes time and operationally it also takes time. Separately, the internet is already shifting in practice. So if you look at the Cloudflare's radar, their data shows that web traffic has risen sharply in its percentage of being post-quantum protected. It's more than half of web traffic that's going around Cloudflare daily simple business is post-quantum secure because they're using TLS 1.3. Issuers do not have to wake up later and then tell the market, oh, we're going to rush into like a cryptographic migration across every exchange, every custodian, every integration partner, all the venues all at once. Stable coins are trust products. They are liabilities together with real world assets. So you want to avoid rush there as much as you can, because you just risk losing them, and you risk losing trust, and you risk losing reputation.
No, makes sense, Dariia. I think what we're saying is exactly that the threat is already here, and the people who are responsible and who know and experts of the quantum have already kind of spread the news that it's time. It's time that people start implementing PQ safe measures, and if not, then it'll already be too late. Projects, upgrade all the time, Daria. Why this kind of a migration is a problem, right? This is something that a lot of stablecoin issuers have an answer. Basically, have this as a question that upgrades have happened before as well, but why is this migration a pain in this case?
Because stablecoin and generally asset migration is not just your regular protocol upgrade. If you imagine like an Ethereum a soft fork, protocol upgrade just touches the validators who are all prepared and all prepared in advance. They have new code and they all of this. In an asset migration, every person that's holding the asset is also going to have to migrate individually. So it's an ecosystem-wide coordination of not just technical participants, but everybody who it touches. It's an event with very, very clear systemic failure modes. So here is like a horror scenario from this point of view of somebody who would issue a stablecoin. So when a stablecoin is listed on like major exchanges, then it's integrated into custody, it's used as collateral across venues, it's bridged into multiple ecosystems, then signature migration becomes very urgent. You cannot partially upgrade it. If some integrations upgrade first, like say the chain or a custody, and others lag, you are in this very, very risky limbo for an unknown amount of time, that some of your parts are secured, but they cannot be finalized security because of the other parts that are still not secured, and some integrations may not be compatible, and it's too much confusion. So deposits and withdrawals are going to have to get paused, and bridges are going to have to get freezed until everything comes to the same level of security of the same protocols. And with everything being so fractured, it's really hard to operationally align everybody to do it at the same time. So your liquidity will split into like old and new pools of representation. So because then with that liquidity is going to thin. So given that, market makers are going to widen spreads or they're going to step back. Even if all your reserves are perfect, the stablecoin can become operationally unreliable for days, if not weeks. That's like millions in lost business. For stablecoin, that also becomes a solvency narrative, regardless of what the reserves are. That is why migrate later is not a solution. If a liquidity fracture event happens, the downstream consequences of it can be horrendous.
I think what you're saying is that migrate later is a liquidity fracture event, and to give the listeners some parallel to this is, imagine that U.S. government says that you can neither deposit and neither withdraw and neither use your US dollar for 2 months straight. And imagine the consequences of that. Like, this is the level of challenge. Even though the dollar has value in the international market, but still people will not be able to trade, use, or kind of hold them for anything relevant. And this is the horror scenario which, Daria, you have listed. Absolutely agree with that, Daria. You have been saying, Daria, that relying on Ethereum, Solana, and Sui and other L1 upgrades is a delayed and fatal strategy. Why do you say this?
Well, there's two big reasons to that. One is the timelines are not deterministic. They are unclear at the moment and very, very dependent on the project. General purpose chains are usually very high governance, high coordination systems that issuers have no control over. So issuers cannot underwrite a stablecoin perimeter on some uncertain multi-year consensus rollout and ecosystem readiness of all these dozens or hundreds of players. Stablecoins do not just get to pause the world. They become a victim of this coordination. Reason number 2 would be that even if they do upgrade to standardized post-quantum signatures, they break market speed. Why is that? Because the bytes and verification speed cliff of existing post-quantum signatures. They are much larger and often much heavier to verify. And I'm talking orders of magnitude to the signatures that we are using today in the blockchains. So this creates a crippling throughput bill. At a chain scale, that bill shows up as like 50 to 70% TPS loss. Pressure on fees on everybody who's going to be using these signatures because they are big now for everyone and everyone's going to pay up. And pressure on decentralization or upgrading their machines for, again, every single validators. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to catch up to the chain. This is not just like abstract. So Solana, for instance, optimized so far for years around a strict transaction size envelope to enable their claimed TPS. Now, if they just take that and enable post-quantum signatures, they blow out of that envelope. Your transactions are not fitting anymore. They have to redesign the formats. They have to redesign networking assumptions. They have to compute budgets and fee economics. It's not just a patch. It fundamentally changes the incentive level of the blockchains that they have been designed for years to come. In your transaction, it used to be that most of the transaction is your data with some signature attached to it. Like a paper document is mostly text and some signature in the bottom. With post-quantum, currently standardized signature, your signature is larger than the whole document. That's not a realistic assumption for the blockchains today, and none of them were built to support it. So if you just wait for the Basel 1 to upgrade, it can be a fatal mistake for you, and it is guaranteed to kill market speed issuance. So what you're betting your reliability or your issuance on is on a future system-wide migration that can take years and accepting a permanent market speed haircut from afterward. So if you've been sold on Solana having this many TPS, imagine after post-quantum upgrade, they're going to have half of it. That's not what will you subscribe to. So PQ later on legacy chains is not market speed. It's market slowdown.
I think this is absolutely yeah, on the point, because what you are exactly explaining is that you can't take a gas car, which was the fastest gas car, and convert it into the fastest EV car, because EV cars from the bottom up are built for that infrastructure, and you just can't switch it. It'll take you 3 years, 4 years. And during that time, if you during those 3-4 years, if you want to win the race from that broken piece of metal, then I don't think so you'll be in the good hands. So this makes sense, Daria. We at EternaX have a novel PQ scheme which has reduced the throughput cliff to less than 2%, which is 70% on Solana, but it is 2% on us because of our new novel PQ schemes. Would you love to highlight, what are the hard to copy wedges for EternaX, and why, we will win this, we are positioned to win this race of post-quantum markets?
Well, one is very clear. It's base layer post-quantum authorization. So EternaX is designed around our novel post-quantum digital signature, and it is native to the base verification path instead of being bolted on as a contract level signature verification, and instead of increasing latency, complexity, and costs. Any workarounds instead of native PQ become a permanent tax and operational risk. Our PQ safety is in the very fabric of the protocol. Second is that we have engineered around the throughput cliff that every other signature has today that gets adopted by other protocols. Our paper is currently under peer review and will be published in the due time. But for 256 security that is common for the protocols, in our document, we can show the same table of comparison. So at 256-bit security level, our scheme targets pretty standard public keys that everybody's used to do 32 bytes, but the signature is only 160 bytes. That is at least 4 times smaller than the next best. The verification of the signature is completely algebraic based on finite field operations. So it's 6 field multiplications. That is a standard, that is constant time verification, in a difference to lattice-based or hash-based signatures. If you can compare that to the classical standards, lattice signatures are in kilobytes for both signatures and keys together. And compact lattice signatures like Falcon are somewhat smaller, but they're still over 600 bytes in the signature. And there have real other implementation caveats to that, being floating point operations. So EternaX signature has 2 issue-grade advantages. One, it allows, and it's the only one that allows market speed post-quantum safety, because compact signature reduce propagation overhead and reduce verification overhead, and they allow you to avoid the throughput cliff at scale. So you avoid the cascade of redesign that is required when your signature suddenly becomes the dominant byte of everything that you send around the network and the dominant verification cost inside the transactions. That is hard to copy because on a general purpose chain, they have legacy transaction formats, they have legacy fee market, they have legacy compatibility constraints of different assumptions of the different data that was going around the network. So just moving to post-quantum signature for an existing protocol is not like simply changing 3 lines of code and flipping a switch. If they are taking a responsible way to upgrade, it should force them to redesign on cross transaction envelopes, block formats, networking assumptions, execution cost models, and wallet ecosystems. That is multi-year and ecosystem-wide if you do it well. If they want to take a non-responsible stance and just upgrade without redesigning all of that, they just tank their TPS day one and you lose one way or another. If you meant a stable coin, you meant an authorization perimeter, or you meant a liability that you cannot have control over with this chains.
Dariia, this was very comprehensive technically, and then thanks for that. One way is to inform our listeners, what the real infra mode is, to show the actual TPS loss that will be suffered by Solana and Ethereum and Sui and other chains, L1s, if they implement the Falcon class signatures, which is the next best signature that is available after us. And mind for everybody else and our listeners that our scheme is a novel scheme which has been implemented at EternaX by the EternaX team. Yeah, Dariia, could you highlight, give us some picture, what is the exact numbers of the TPS loss?
Right. So we have seen blogs from projects like Solana, Sui, and Ethereum that they are looking at the Falcon signatures that are assuming that they take care of, they have the most optimized implementation. The throughput bill is still severe on the general purpose chains. So under assumption that they are going to be using Falcon signatures, and to take in mind that classical signatures of elliptic curves that are used today are on the order of magnitude of 60 bytes, of Falcon is an order of magnitude of 600, Solana is poised to lose up to 77% of their TPS versus what they have today. Sui in the similar up to 70%, is slightly better, they could lose about 30% of their already quite low TPS. On EternaX, we avoided almost completely because of the protocol design and because of this scheme was designed specifically for high performance. We only suffer 2% difference to classical elliptic curves. So your stance of hoping that, Ethereum is just going to migrate later or Solana are going to migrate later fails twice, one after another. First, it's coordination and liquidity fracture risk, specifically for stablecoins. And second, even after they migrate, your market speed breaks, limits usability, and post-quantum signatures impose a throughput cliff.
So I think it is a double whammy, Dariia. What you have listed here is that first is obviously you get a liquidation fracture because the upgrades will stop a lot of activities that are happening. And then even once the upgrade is done and migration is complete, the chain is just not able to keep up with the market speed. And eventually, your transactions are not going, your trades are not happening. So I mean, that's a double whammy. I think the issuers, stablecoin issuers, should look at it very strictly, because this is one thing that they can decide day one. And one thing is, I'll cover on my end, is that why this PQ native is actually a selling point for the distribution and acceptance of and by the stablecoin issuers, because it de-risks the adoption of the counterparties that matter, that is exchanges, custodians, payment rails, larger integrators. A PQ native stablecoin says three things day one. We are not embedding future forced migration event into the asset. We can operate at market speed without PQ throughput cliff. Authorization is a future proof from day one. And distribution is increasingly about integration and existing acceptance rails. Visa's crypto head has been blunt about this. If you want stablecoins to be used as a product, you still have to connect to the merchant acceptance ecosystem. That is why the issuance perimeter and the operational reliability story matters. Day one PQ native is not an ideology, it matters. It is enterprise grade risk reduction. Thanks for highlighting all the issues, Dariia. I would love you to recap what we have discussed in this podcast for our listeners. That would be great.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize mostly three takeaways. Stablecoin issuance is an authorization decision that lasts 4 years. So Migrate later is not a valid stablecoin plan. It is a coordination and liquidity, fracture risk, reputational risk, operational risk. Depending on a general chain, post-quantum upgrades may be delayed and fatal to the throughput of those chains. Even after post-quantum migration, market speed breaks due to cliff of throughput of bytes and the verification costs. So EternaX exists to make one thing true, that minting PQ native dollars day one and keeping them market speed. If you are an issuer or an integration partner, and if you want PQ native issuance pilot blueprint, talk to us. You can find our contacts in the description. And thank you everybody for listening to the Control Loop.
Thank you everyone.